AITA for banning my son's mom from a memorial. My ex-wife Diana have 3 boys who are 16, 12 and 10. We divorced pretty much after the youngest was born. We also both remarried. She married Christopher and got a divorce last year after 7 years of marriage. I'm still happily married to my wife Jessica. Christopher and my boys were pretty close and they were bummed when the divorce happened. I always got along with the dude. A few months after the divorce, Christopher disclosed that the divorce was over as being diagnosed over adenocarcinoma and Diana not wanting to be his nursemaid or responsible for his medical bills. Checks out. He told me this because he wanted to leave whatever he had to my kids. Unfortunately, he had no family of his own. Obviously I said of course and signed paperwork. A few months ago, I got a call from a social worker saying that Christopher was a few months from dying and unable to care for himself. He gave her my number. Basically they needed someone to help with end of life. He had made me his power of attorney. He was living in a county hospice and my wife and I moved him into our home because he deserved to live his final days in dignity. It also taught my kids about compassion. Unfortunately he died after 2 weeks. He was cremated a few days ago and me, my wife, my kids and a few of our friends are planning to spread his ashes at the beach this weekend. Diana asked if she could attend and I told her to kick rocks. She wanted nothing to do with him when he was dying. I'm not saying Christopher was a burden, but that's really sad that this dude had to reach out to his ex-wife's first husband like he did. It was clearly more her responsibility. I said she can't sit there and let us do all the hard work so she can come in at the end as the grieving widow. My older son thinks I should let her come and I told him to mind his own business and mouth. I'm not going to sugarcoat your mom for you. Your mom is a witch and will be treated the same way she treated your stepdad. AITA for calling my pregnant sister a heinous bitch. My 37F sister, Lisa 25F. Announced her pregnancy in June and has been an unholy terror the whole time. A lot of it can be put down to hormones and she does apologize when she calms down. But the one that's really rubbing me the wrong way is she expects everyone in the family to abstain from things she can't eat or drink. It's hard on our parents because Lisa lives 2 houses down from them so they can't escape this rule, and it's really wearing on Dad because his hobby and passion is wine. My husband, Alan 39M, and I went over to see Mom and Dad last weekend, and while there, Alan was talking to Dad about the little tourist town we went to for our wedding anniversary a few weekends ago and let it slip that we went to dinner at the main attraction for that town, its winery. Lisa overheard and lost her mind that we dared drink while she's pregnant. My wonderful, supportive, vibrant parents just deflated and looked like they were bracing for impact, which pushed me over the edge. I told Lisa that Alan and I going to a winery 150 kilometers away for our anniversary has zero impact on her or her baby's health and she needed to stop being a tyrant. She got angrier and said I was undermining her pregnancy. I don't even know what that means. And she's hormonal, so we should expect this from her. I reminded her I have 2 kids, so I know firsthand how hormones can make you irrational. But it doesn't give her a free pass to be a heinous bitch. She threw a few more choice insults at me and stormed off. Mom said I shouldn't have done that because it'll make her a nightmare for them for the foreseeable future. I apologized to them and Alan offered them our guest room, but I don't think I was wrong for calling Lisa out on her behavior. AITA for giving away $10,000 without my husband's consent. My 40F grandma deceased raised me to be fiscally responsible. The second I was able to get a bank account, she hammered into my head that I needed a bank account that would be secret from my partner. According to her, she had a ton of friends who had found lovely men who turned nasty and had to sneak out in the middle of the night with nothing but the clothes on their back. She ingrained in me the idea that a kind husband could turn sour and I needed to make sure I had some protection, just in case. I'd love to say that she was paranoid, but my mother had to disappear on my dad after finding out he was cheating on her. She has always been thankful that she has what she calls a Grammy's secret fund that she had been saving into for years. I've been putting money into my own Grammy's secret fund for 22 years and have accumulated quite a lot. Beyond that account, I've incurred a great savings with my husband, paid into my retirement fund, and always paid my bills on time. I've been married to my husband for 15 years. He's always been great, but my best friend hasn't been so lucky. She met and married a man who seemed to be wonderful, but over the past 6 years has become emotionally and financially abusive, racist, and completely negligent toward their 2 children. I was shocked as he had seemed so great in the beginning, but I've witnessed his absolute abhorrent behavior over the past few years myself. For a little backstory, my best friend has been so since I was 6 years old. To reference the meme, we were girls together. She is my person and I think of her kids as my kids. She has never asked me for anything, but she told me that when she left him he froze her out of their accounts and she had nothing for rent or to pay for a lawyer. She had been paying into their accounts for years, but she trusted him to have his name as the only name on them and he had drained their accounts. Without a second thought, I transferred her $15,000. I told her I honestly don't care if she ever pays it back. When my husband asked about how she could afford a new apartment and a lawyer, I explained and he hit the roof. Firstly, he was enraged that I had saved into a secret account, and secondly, that I would just give away that amount of money. We have never really struggled financially, and I've always made more money than him, so I don't know why he'd be so upset, but how he's saying he would have stressed a lot less knowing that I had that kind of money at my disposal. He's told his side of the family and they're saying I'm an asshole. Am I an asshole? AITA for insulting my father's girlfriend and telling her to get out of our lives. My mother was my world. I remember reading books, watching documentaries, and going on road trips with her. She baked my sister and I cookies whenever we were sick. Her and Dad would take us hiking every other week. I still miss her even now. When I was 11 years old, she passed away from a driving accident. It was the hardest year in my life, and it hasn't gotten easier. 2 years after she passed, my father started dating a woman named Nicole, and 4 years later, they're getting married. Nicole is younger than my father. After dating Nicole, I saw my father come back into his shell, but it turned into something else. Nicole brought adventure back into his life, but they often went on elaborate trips and frequent night outs. During all of this, I felt neglected. My father slowly stopped taking my sister and I on our weekly hikes. He started speaking less and less over calls, and he even once forgot my mother's birthday. After she came into our lives, I started losing my father. He just wasn't there anymore. One time, when my sister and I were home alone, she fell down the stairs and got a huge cut on her forehead. It was clear she needed stitches, so I called my father immediately. Nicole answered the phone, and I told her to give the phone to my father. She refused, saying he was busy, and before I could get another word in, she disconnected the call. I embarrassingly had to ask the neighbor to bring us to urgent care, where my dad later met us. This woman at one point removed my mother's picture from the fire mantle to put up a picture of her and my dad from their trip to Washington. The thing that tipped me over was when she made my father forget about my mother's birthday. Every year, my sister and I go with our father to visit my mother on her birthday. It was an annual tradition even before Nicole entered our lives. Nicole and my father went on a trip to Florida and were supposed to be back 3 days before my mother's birthday. But, because this woman is motion sick, my father decided to break the drive back into small intervals to make it easier on her. Because of this, he ended up missing our annual trip. He didn't even call us. Not even a week later, my father has the nerve to tell us about an exciting surprise. Nicole is pregnant. I get angry and tell my father, you need to knock her ass up when you can't even be here for us. I then look at Nicole and tell her she is a disgusting piece of trash and to get out of our lives. My father gets angry and yells at me to go up to my room. Later, my grandpa unexpectedly came over to pick me up. My father didn't text me shit. Even as I left, he wouldn't even look at me. It's been 2 days, and I'm still at my grandparents' home. I feel ashamed for saying what I said, yet I don't feel overwhelming regret. AITA for leaving my siblings stranded overseas. At 29 FM, the oldest of 5, and have been low contact with them and my parents for several years now. I don't really know what happens in their lives and I only hear from them during emergencies and maybe some holidays. I was really shocked when my sister Lulu 26F called me in the early morning. She was crying on the phone asking if she can talk to me about mom and dad. I asked her what's wrong and if she's safe. Where is she? Does she need to be picked up, etc. Lulu tells me she's super stressed out because she's not even halfway through her Switzerland trip and she's out of funds. She's called her parents but they don't want to give her any money and said that she needs to come home. I told her that it's wise to come home if she can afford the rest of the trip and I can help her find the cheapest flight. Lulu didn't want that because she'll look poor in front of her friends, plus she only needed to borrow $8,000. I said no, I can't lend her money to continue her trip, but I can lend her a ticket home. She yelled at me about being selfish and hung up on me. I tried calling her back but she didn't respond. A few hours later, my parents call me to tell me that I'm being really cruel and how can I leave my sister stranded in another country and how they didn't raise me this way, blah and blah. I was so furious and confused. I offered to lend her funds for a ticket home and she refused. My parents are calling me an asshole for not letting Lulu continue her trip and ruining an opportunity to be a good role model, whatever that means. My other siblings have heard that Lulu is stranded and stressed because I'm being a heartless bitch. Am I the asshole in this situation though? AITA for not fighting the school to allow my daughter to do cheerleading since the athletic trainer denied her. I am so tired and need an outside opinion. The school's athletic trainer Beth is a very strict woman. She started 2 years ago and at the time I thought she was just being a bitch and on a power trip. She was not. All she was asking for is basic respect. This became really apparent when the school had a meeting about her and went through every single incident with her. They used the camera footage for a lot of incident. Parents know that offices recorded, and it showed the kids were awful and she was professional. The kids were awful and really ended up have a tantrum when she told them no. Many times the kids calling her names and it really made me reevaluate my opinion on her. One example for a reference. One kid needed to do a balance test and take off their shoes. She had a fit and refused to do so. The athletic trainer told her that was fine, but without it they can't play. She took off her shoes and called her some lovely names. Not to mention the parents getting on her ass for it. Now my daughter is a sophomore 15 and she needs to do a concussion test in the winter. If she doesn't, then she can't cheer. She knew about the whole thing and they had a practice for the thing. She gave everyone a time to be in her office. My daughter got a time and didn't go in at that time. She went in at the end of practice when she was packing up. Beth told her no, and I am embarrassed to say it, but my daughter had a huge fit about it. Beth stood her ground on it and went home. Now she is on vacation and my daughter cannot cheer until the concussion test is done. That will probably be done in December, so she is missing a ton of cheer events due to Thanksgiving fest. My daughter was pissed and wants me to fight the school. I told her no since I saw how she acted. I asked for the footage. That is what she gets for being inconsiderate to Beth. My wife wants to fight it and both of them think I'm huge jerks. AITA for not making food for kids. Last Saturday, we had a few friends. It was 3 couples and us. We all have kids. I am from a country that doesn't make a different meal for kids. The kids eat exactly the same as adults, only in a smaller portion and pre-cut if necessary. 2 of the 3 couples are also from the same country as we met in German class. One of the couples we met at an event. So asked everyone if there were allergies, restrictions, no-goes, etc. I had to keep in mind for dinner. They all said no. Everything was normal. When they arrived, we had a good time until dinner was served. Let's call the couple we met at the event Lena and Leon. It all started with Lena saying the kids should eat beforehand. I said that the food was not done. Then we started serving the food. We put the kids' portion in those colorfully IKEA bowls and put them down. Lena and Leon were flabbergasted. They asked where the kids' food was. I pointed, confused, to the bowl. Leon said that was no kids' food. That kids' food was nuggets, pizza, or pasta with ketchup. Their kids were crying and started crying even harder when the other kids started eating the food. Leon took their kids to McDonald's, and Lena said that we should adapt to this country and eventually also left. I feel really horrible because I wanted to be a good host. My husband said that they should have told me if the kids were picky eaters. My other friends say we maybe should have done some more research. So, AITA for not making food for kids? Edit: we, Colombian and live in Germany. Edit: 2 we made bistec al caballo. It's a sort of thin steak in tomato onion sauce, rice and egg on top of it. Also, usually, the parents assemble their kids' food. So my other friends made the plate odd their kids as they knew their kids would like it. AITA for not telling my partner about my period tracking app. I 30F have been seeing a guy 39M for a little over a month. We have talked and know that we are not exclusive or ready for titles. But we have discussed that we are sexually exclusive. When I first became sexually active, I thought it would be a good idea to use a period tracking app to track my cycles and ovulation. I was not on BC when I lost my virginity. In that app is a sex intimacy option that I use when I start dating a new partner. Nothing special, just with or without condom, masturbation, oral, orgasm, etc. It also has options to add symptoms and moods. Anyway, my partner and I were talking and the topic of how many times we've hung out without sex came up. I said I could check my app to see. He immediately became uncomfortable and ended our phone conversation. A few minutes later I received this text: I feel violated. Keeping track of sex is so fucked, and to not tell me is even more fucked. I wanted to take some time off. I told him that I will respect his boundaries, and then explained the purpose of the app is track my menstrual cycle. Had nothing to do with tracking my partner's. I also voiced that I understand his uncomfortableness and will give him space. Now my question is, am I the asshole for not disclosing about my period tracker? AITA for not wanting to invite my husband's cousin, her husband, and their 5 children to our house for Thanksgiving dinner. 2 weeks ago we invited my husband's cousin, her husband, and their 5 children, 11F, 8 meters, 4 meters, 3 meters, 6 months old baby boy to our house for dinner. Her 4 older kids were horrible the entire time. They broke some of my daughter's toys, got chocolate on our dining room chairs. They screamed every time they argued over things. They kept trying to terrorize my fish and bearded dragon. And the 11-year-old girl was mean and told my 5-year-old daughter that she looks like a boy, which she doesn't, and I'm not just saying that because she's my daughter. Since then, my daughter has been asking if she looks like a boy, and we don't know what else to say to reassure her that she doesn't and that she's a very beautiful girl. During their time here, The mom had a hard time supervising them because she had the 6-month-old to breastfeed and entertain, and the dad couldn't get the boys under control because they wouldn't listen to him. The dad actually wanted to go outside and grill with my husband, but my husband kindly asked him to stay inside and help watch his kids after seeing how active and disruptive they were. Many times I offered my husband's cousin to hold and watch the baby so that she could keep an eye on her other kids, but she always refused. I'm pregnant and felt too tired to deal with her boys, but at the same time I felt like that was the parents' job, and not mine. I had already spoken to the kids about how to treat animals, keeping their voices down while indoors, how to be gentle with other children's toys, but they literally didn't care. After they left, my husband and I agreed that they will not be invited to our house again. If we want to spend time with them, it'd be at a park or something. We're hosting Thanksgiving this year, and we're now being highly criticized by his side of the family because we are not planning on inviting his cousin and her family. They said that we should at least invite them one last time for Thanksgiving, but we don't want to deal with parents that can't keep their children under control in our house again. Are we assholes for not wanting to invite them for Thanksgiving dinner for a last time? Update: I read someone's comment about us knowing beforehand how the kids behave, and that's not true. A little over 2 months ago, my husband received a call from his cousin that he had not seen or heard of since they were teenagers, and she said that they've been living in our state for the past 4 years. No one had any idea that she was living here, much less living just an hour away from us. On that phone call she invited us to her house to meet her family, and so we went to her house on a weekend. The few hours we were in her home, the kids seemed well behaved, and none of them acted crazy. The worst they did was run around, but that's not an issue and I don't mind that at all. A few days later, my husband asked me if I was okay with him inviting them over one weekend for dinner, and I agreed. During their visit in our house, we were surprised by the children's behavior, and we don't understand how they could be on their best behavior in their own home, and be out of control in someone else's home. We were under the impression that they knew how to behave in other people's homes the way they do in theirs. AITA for refusing to go in another room so my fiancé and the baby could sleep alone. My fiancé Jen 29F just gave birth to our daughter 2 months ago. She strictly breastfeeds, so as you can imagine, she gets far less sleep than I do. During the day I help with changing or holding her, but all feedings are up to Jen. The baby outright refuses a bottle. We have tried several times, but ultimately we are both okay with this. Anyways, I'm kind of an independent startup video game developer. I did make one video game 2 years ago, but it honestly wasn't that great. So while I do get revenue from it, it's definitely not much or even a livable wage. This time around however I'm working with 4 other people and the game is turning out great. I also work a 9-5, but after getting home, having dinner with my fiancé and looking after the baby for a while, I jump on and work on the game. For the past 2-3 nights I have been up till 1-2 a.m. working on the game, and I have been ultra tired. I snore like a maniac when I'm tired. It's super embarrassing because I truly sound like a Mack truck. But yesterday the baby had her 2 months shots and she was so fussy. Cried way more than normal. It was super hard for my fiancé to get her to sleep. I finally went to bed around 2 a.m. and my fiancé immediately asked me to sleep on the couch so I wouldn't wake the baby with my snoring. I said no. I was so tired and the couch is not comfortable at all. I had to work early. I wanted to sleep. She didn't fight it, but she called me a fucking prick and walked out of the room with the baby. I woke up this morning to the baby in the crib in the nursery and my fiancé asleep on the floor with no pillows, blankets. She still won't talk to me. AITA for saying that S rich coming from you to a family with kids when they complained about our dog. Hi, why all this sub recently helped me out with another issue so I could return and present another issue. Even though it's not that dramatic. Context: my family was at a restaurant to eat out because we celebrated Uncle's 50th birthday. We also brought our dog along. I completely understand when people are annoyed when there are dogs everywhere, and some people really take it too far. I get it. But basically we had no choice. Our girl has trauma and can stay alone for too long, and we had no one to watch her. And, I know everyone says that, but she's really well behaved. She just lays under the table, looks around a bit and sometimes begs a little, but only from us. She's also really small. Anyway, there were some couples and groups of 3s present, but the only other bigger party were, what I guess, a mom, a grandma and 2 kids, 3-6-ish. I should say that I like kids. I really do. I want to work with kids. In fact I am 18. BTW. But these little guys were still somewhat disturbing. They screeched and yelled, and one of the kids asked like 3 times for fries when they were already ordered for him. A bit annoying, but not to the point I would complain, honestly. However, pretty suddenly the grandma started to complain about people that bring their dog everywhere and that it's so gross when one is in a closed area. She looked in our direction with an annoyed face, and I admit, It annoyed me pretty much. Would it have been any of the other guests, I would understand, but our girl was simply minding her own business while their kiddos annoyed everyone. So I looked at her and said, that's rich coming from you. Since your group is the most disturbing one here while no one complains about Dinka. The grandma stared at me and then looked at my parents so they would say something, but my mom simply continued to eat and my dad looked back at her and grinned. She looked like she wanted to say more, but the other woman told her to let it be and tried to calm the kids down. We didn't interact further the rest of our stay. This happened 2 days ago, but I am still unsure if I was my call to say what I said, because I know how kids can be and it really can be annoying when everyone brings their dog everywhere, but I just felt the need to defend my dog because she wasn't doing anything. So Reddit, AITA, Edit, I didn't ask if the offer bringing our dog with us. The restaurant was dog friendly. Edit 2, I am not American. Please stop calling me names for doing something legally. Edit 3, I am gonna log out now. This is a little bit overwhelming and some people are sadly getting toxic. ILL accept everyone's judgment. I honestly didn't want to start a dogs and kids restaurant debate, and I see now that dog culture is very different in Europe than in the US. Thanks to the nice and constructive people that didn't just call me names. AITA for showing everyone why I do not cook nice meals for my parents. I love to cook. I'm not a professional or anything, but I am very good at following recipes and getting the results that I want. My family does not do a traditional Thanksgiving meal. Instead, we might have a barbecue or a crawfish boil or something. When we have people over to our home, I like to go all out. I maybe go overboard. I usually cook very plain meals for my parents because they do not like fancy food. Last time they were over, I had pho for everyone. I had made the broth from scratch and had the meat super thinly sliced by the butcher. My mom and dad both pretended to gag at the raw meat and insisted that I cook it before they would add it to their soup. I took it and gave it a quick stir fry so they wouldn't complain, but everyone was done eating before me and them. I said I was done making them anything they wouldn't eat. It was my turn to host Thanksgiving, and my wife and I decided to make grilled duck breasts in a raspberry balsamic reduction with a bunch of great sides. I also had 2 grilled chicken breasts, baked potatoes, steamed veggies, and dinner rolls ready for my parents. When I brought out the food, they were disappointed that they didn't get the food everyone else, including my picky 12-year-old niece got. They said I was being an ass by serving them the same as everyone else. Everyone agreed that I was being a jerk not giving them the same food. So I gave them the 2 plates I had made up with duck breasts, rice pilaf, fennel salad, butternut squash puree, with green beans and butter sauce. Everyone dug in and was enjoying the meal when my mom asked if she could get all the sauce wiped off her duck and have it cooked more, and if she could have the regular vegetables and potato. My dad asked for the same. I told them to scrape the sauce off their duck and I would slice it up and fry it. I brought out the vegetables and potatoes and their fried dry duck breast. They each maybe ate a quarter of it before asking for the chicken. I brought the chicken out and took away all their untouched food. The problem is that they were on me afterwards for trying to feed them undercooked duck and then frying it so it was too dry, and that all the sides were too rich. I told them to ask everyone else how the meal was. Even my niece cleaned her plate. I can't win. AITA for telling my brother his mistake wasn't in remarrying but in how he handled the process. My brother Frank 40 meters was widowed 6 years ago. 2 years ago he got remarried to Emily 38F. Frank has 3 children with his first wife, Ava 14F, Noah 13F and Harley 10 meters. Emily also has a son 9 meters and a stepdaughter from her ex-husband who she has custody of 12F. Frank and Emily started dating just before the pandemic hit. The kids were not aware of the fact Frank was dating. He told them 2 months before the wedding. It was a month later he announced he was getting married and Emily and her kids were moving in. Frank's kids have adapted worse than Emily's kids. The kids have refused to take part in family activities, are distant and cold with Emily and her kids, and have yelled at my brother multiple times, accusing him of replacing their mom and saying fuck Emily, they don't care about Emily, they don't want Emily, etc. Frank, Emily, Ava, Noah and Harley have started attending family counseling 7-ish months or so now. They have seen 3 therapists thus far because the kids would sit and sulk per Frank's own words and would not open up or engage, and each time the therapist ends up just talking to Frank and Emily. Frank started to complain about how mad the kids are at him. He said they were selfish for expecting him to stay single for the rest of his life. He said he's tired of them making no effort to make the blended family work. He said he hates how they work against it and he hates how people treat him like he made a mistake when he remarried. He wanted to know if he wasn't entitled to his happiness, etc. I listened to him vent countless times. Last time he told me he felt I had something to say and I should just say it. I told him his mistake was never in remarrying, but in how he did it. He only told the kids he was dating 2 months prior to his wedding, Told him a month later he was getting married and 3 people were moving in and then married in that 2-month timeline when everything was still very new and strange to them. I told him most kids will struggle with the idea of their parent moving on after divorce or the death of their parent. That's why people usually spend years dating and getting the kids adjusted so they have time to process and work through their feelings, to work through the fresh wave of grief that hearing news like that would bring. I said dating and letting everyone get to know each other over a period of time and helping the kids through is the best way to make a blended family. He got mad at me and told me he shouldn't have to adjust his timeline for anyone, not even his kids. I asked him how he'd feel to hear Dad is dating someone 30 years after our mom died. He told me there is no way Dad would do that and fuck me for even suggesting it. I told him so he'd have a problem with it but can't understand his kids having a problem with him doing it. He told me it's not the same and he's not judging Dad but I'm judging him and that makes me an asshole. AITA for telling my family not to show up at my house for Thanksgiving. I have been cooking the majority of the Thanksgiving meal for over 10 years now, while I still get help from my sister and mom. I do 75 of the cooking. Ever since I was little, we hosted Thanksgiving at my house. All of my father's side of the family comes to our house and my one aunt's family on my mom's side comes sometimes. We have a fairly big family so there needs to be enough food for about 30 people. As I got older, I became more aware of how unequal the division of labor is. Not only does my family host the meal, but the out-of-state family sleeps over our house during the holiday weekend, and we provide the majority of the food. While my maternal aunt's family always brings a couple of dishes, there were years when none of the families on my father's side of the family brought any food to contribute. When we asked them to bring a dish, they would bring the easiest thing, a case of beer, a store-bought pie, or instant mashed potatoes. When we make comments about this, my dad's side of the family just replies, well, you guys are such good cooks, of course we want to eat your food. Or simply, well, I brought beer. For context, we are not the wealthiest family unit in our extended family and all of my father's siblings have big enough houses to host. Given the cost and labor of doing all of this, we asked our dad to talk to his siblings to share some of the load, but he just huffs that he asked them to, but they didn't follow through. Even on years when we announced that we are doing Thanksgiving by ourselves, we still receive texts asking when dinner is, a text asking when dinner is, or they just show up. In addition to just showing up, they also demand to split the leftovers evenly. My dad recently indicated that since he's the oldest sibling he feels like he has to host and that this aligns to our culture. I asked him if he's going to enforce the part of our culture which dictates that once I get married I'm supposed to spend the majority of my time with my husband's family, leaving them screwed since I do most of the cooking. He didn't answer. Some of my aunts and uncles have been making jokes about how they're going to go to my house in the future for the holidays because they love my food. I made it very clear to them that if I do not invite them to my home for Thanksgiving, I am not letting them in even if they show up at the door. They keep making comments like, "Wow, you're just going to leave your family out on the streets during the holidays?" And I said, "Yes, I am going to lock my doors and I will not open them for you." They all became very angry and complained to my dad how I'm awful and how I don't care about the family. I love my family but I am just tired of doing the majority of work. So AITA for telling my family not to show up at my house for Thanksgiving. AITA for telling my kids to not help their stepdad. My fiancé 44M and I 42F have a blended family. I have 2 boys, 14-19 from a previous marriage, and he has a son 15 from one as well. We've been together for 8 years, living together for 7 his house. He asked me to move in. For the first couple years everything was better than I ever imagined it could be. All 5 of us would do the cleaning, yard work, firewood, miscellaneous projects, etc. together. No fights, no complaints. Then we became friends with a married couple. My fiancé and the guy really hit it off. Talked daily. He, too, had a blended family, but his marriage was going sour. Sex less than once a month. She's a som who refused to clean the house, take care of the farm animals, or the kids, and he complained the stepkids were lazy and refused to help out. Suddenly, my fiancé started having the exact same complaints, although it was BS. We had sex 2 times a week, kids all helped. He began to yell at my kids for doing things that he was fine with his son doing. He started only asking his son for help even if all 3 were together, and I'd have to ask my boys to go after them and help. Then I found out he's been complaining to anyone who'd listen how we never have sex and my boys are lazy and won't help do anything. So now when he only asks his son for help, I tell my boys to not go out after them. AITA for telling my sister I am going to get a restraining order. 2 years ago, IF49 found out that two teenagers both newly 18 by a week or so at that time that my husband M53 and I had gotten to know were living in their car. We have an in-law suite in our house that wasn't being used and I couldn't in good conscience let those kids keep sleeping rough knowing I had the room for them. They moved in and we're a family now. My husband and I never had kids of our own, so these two are our kids now. They're incredible. We love them dearly and spoil them rotten. Both kids were discarded by their bio families because they are LGBTQIA. Both were born biologically female, but one J is transitioning to male and the other B is non-binary. They're together romantically. My sister 59F lives in another city about 3 hours away. When she would come to visit, she would stay in the in-law suite, so I let her know that she would need to stay upstairs in the guest room instead of in the suite. She asked why. I told her the story of J and B. My sister didn't visit when she said she would, so I called her up to check in. She proceeded to tell me that she felt that I had let demons into my home willingly and that by letting the kids live here, I was sinning. I told her that I accepted that she could have that opinion, but what I did in my home was my business, and since she had not met the kids, she had no right to call them demons. They're amazing humans. So, for 2 years now, she's been sending me sermons and preaching at me. My husband and I skipped Thanksgiving to avoid her because last year was awful with her sermons. I called and told my gathered family happy Thanksgiving and sent my love, but that was it. She was there and knew I was fine. Then, the police come knocking at my door as we sit down to eat Thanksgiving dinner with the now 20-year-olds. My crazy sister had called them for a welfare check and made it seem like I was being held hostage by people in my house. The cops came in all aggressive and demanded to search my house for what? And then sat me down in a separate room and grilled me about why I'd let strangers live in my house. Were they harming me or holding stuff over my head? Was my husband abusing me? Could they see my arms for bruises, etc.? I was so traumatized by how we were all treated that I called my sister and told her I'm filing a restraining order and want no further contact with her. This is too far. She knew I was fine. She knows that no one is harming me. AITA X200B. AITA for telling my son that his stepsister invaded his privacy. I have an 18-year-old son and a 16-year-old stepdaughter. They are civil with each other but have their own lives. It is just how our family is, especially since my husband and I got married when my son was 14 and his daughter was 12. I'm not too strict with my son. I don't know what he does with his friends, and I'm not too involved in his personal relationships. We are still just as close as any other mother and child. Anyways, a couple days ago my stepdaughter sent me a series of photos of my son. I believe he may have posted them on his private social media accounts, and it was images of him at parties, smoking, drinking, and doing things with both genders. I immediately told my stepdaughter that what she did was unnecessary and inappropriate. She replied with, "Sorry, just thought you should know." I told her that unless he's in danger or hurting himself, other people, I'd rather not know what my 18-year-old son does in his free time. Now I did not want them to fight, so I didn't say anything, especially since my stepdaughter apologized once again. But yesterday I was with my husband and he was showing me a video on his phone when his daughter started sending him a bunch of messages. He opened them in front of me and it was the same exact pictures of my son that she sent me days before, but this time she said, "So I sent these to stepmom, but she thinks this is okay behavior. Do you agree?" My husband didn't really know how to react and told her that it really wasn't any of their business what he does, and she just sent a bunch of eye roll emojis. My son came home a while later and I decided to tell him that his stepsister was sending us pictures of him. He seemed confused and asked to see, so I showed him the messages. He was extremely embarrassed and upset and went to his room. I then heard him on the phone yelling at someone. My stepdaughter came home an hour later and started yelling at me for snitching on her. I told her that she was invading his privacy and he has the right to know. I gave her the benefit of the doubt the first time, but then she sent the pictures to her father. She said that I just ruined half of her friendships and my son and a lot of his friends blocked her on social media. She says that she had good intentions and wanted me to know what he was up to just in case, but I just had to assume the worst. My husband agrees that my son should know, but he thinks we could have just given him a vague idea instead of showing the pictures and actually telling him. AITA for trying to stop someone getting a house. My mom has had the same neighbors for 50 years. Her next door neighbor was in a government subsidized home. The lady has now moved to a long-term assisted living facility, so her house is vacant. One of our other neighbors has a daughter married with a few kids. They want the now vacant home as she would be directly opposite her mother, and the house has a garden for the children. They asked us if we would sign a petition to convince the government to house them there. This is where the problem is. Our neighbors are wonderful people, so is their daughter and grandchildren, but the son-in-law is a thug. He has tried to intimidate my extended family over a public parking space which he has claimed as his own, screaming obscenities at us, revving his car like he will mow us down. and using his sheer size to stand over us to intimidate us. My elderly mother is terrified of him, but because of how wonderful my neighbors are, she feels like she cannot refuse to sign this petition. She said she feels incredibly anxious about potentially living next door to this man. As it stands, she will not leave the house or car if he is there, as she is so afraid of him. And at the moment, he is just there occasionally. But if he is living next door, she feels like she will be trapped. Yes, I wanted to report him to the police, and to the housing agency, but my mom didn't want to make him angrier, so she wouldn't allow me. Would I be the asshole if I reported him to the housing agency anyway? I do not want my elderly mother to feel afraid entering and leaving her own home for maybe the amount of time she has left on this planet. Whipped for cutting my daughter out financially for lying about her money and how she's getting it. I 47 have one child, a daughter Neela 19. My wife and I did pretty well for ourselves, so we've been financially supporting her and caring for her child since she's been in a university. While she's away at college, we helped pay for her tuition, we pay for her car insurance, and give her a decent amount of money every month to focus on her studies stress-free, while she is away. Along with that, we care and provide for her daughter. Neela goes to school a few hours away, and our nephew was visiting this area and seen her at a local club, as a pole girl. She asked him not to tell us, but he did so anyways. I confronted her and she tried to deny it, but then admitted she's been doing this for the past few months. I asked her why, and basically short answer is she's not responsible with the money we're giving her, and shopping is more important. I then threatened to cut her off financially, because for one, I don't approve of my only daughter doing this kind of work, and two, she's making money of her own and isn't being responsible with ours. 3. Hiding it from us and not sending any back to help with Kimberly in any way. She began to cry and begged me not to. She said it wasn't fair. That was she an adult and could do as she pleases but still needs help. My wife thinks I'm being too harsh, and that maybe we should give her a smaller amount of money each month. AITA,